Now, tonight we're looking at an exciting new project which is aimed at addressing the capacity shortages at a municipal level across the country. And it, to my mind, provides for a really good example of a sustainable local government framework into the future if we're looking at public-private partnerships. And it's an area that is in desperate need of repair, as we've witnessed failure on many levels in the more rural municipalities. They need to deliver services. They have their own challenges, low tax bases, and in many instances poor technical skills as well. Now, to find out who's involved, how the project got off the ground, and what potential this presents to, as I said, repair that ailing layer of government, it's a great pleasure to welcome tonight's guests in studio, Geralda Wildschutt, Social Performance Manager at Anglo American. Evening, Geralda.
Good evening.
And opposite you, I'm going to struggle with this one too, Thomas Fugelsnes. I hope I got that semi-correct. Thomas, welcome to the program. You're with the Investment Climate Facility for Africa.
Thank you, Michael.
And on the line we have Sinazo Sibisi, who is the Group Executive of Infrastructure Delivery at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Good evening, Sinazo. Great to have you back on the program.
Good evening, Michael, and good evening to your listeners.
Now, before we talk about this exciting project, perhaps, Sinazo, if you could just outline for us what are the basic roles and powers and functions of our municipalities as they're currently prescribed by the Constitution?
In essence, municipalities are there to provide basic services to communities. That's basically water, electricity, roads, and bulk infrastructure and so forth. They also have a developmental role in the sense that they're supposed to create an enabling environment and promote local economic development to support business growth, to support more sustainable development. And clearly within the context of climate change, they also have to be looking to the future and to promote more environmentally friendly and sustainable approaches to development and encourage integrated development.
And some of the challenges to municipalities is, on the one hand, some of the smaller municipalities may be losing tax revenue because of urban migration, as people flock to the city centres looking for the economic lights, and that in itself presents a whole raft of challenges for those smaller, more rural municipalities as well.
Absolutely, because to begin with, many of these municipalities already don't have a strong economic base. Unlike many of our urban centres where you can identify very clear different sectors that drive growth, whether it's the financial sector or the mining sector, in many of these municipalities there's very limited economic potential. And particularly in terms of mining towns, there are real questions about what happens in those areas after the life of the mine, and how can you begin to stimulate greater levels of economic activity so you can make those communities sustainable, so the municipalities can begin to generate the revenues that allows them to deliver services more effectively.
That's a very good point. And Geralda, maybe you can pick up on that, because we do see a lot of work underway in providing housing on mining community land. But then what does happen once the commodities have been pulled out of the ground to a community that now has put down some roots in an area where perhaps as migrant labourers they might not have? And how are mines looking at that issue going forward and building sustainable communities when they leave?
Yeah, Michael, I think it is a challenge, but I think the mining the industry, and particularly Anglo American as a mining company, have good partnerships with the Department of Mineral Resources. You may know that we deliver what is called social and labor plans. Of course, as all mines, our social and labor plans are committed or are part of obtaining a mining license. And as part of social and labor plans, therefore, we partner with the municipalities where we mine. And a mine, obviously, the life of mine can be quite long, so you could look at a life of mine of between 10 to 40 years. In that time, I think the opportunity exists for companies to scope with local municipalities, with government departments, a vision of saying what can be done in terms of socio-economic upliftment of that particular community, with the mining company playing a certain role to achieve that. And these social and labor plan projects can be anything from what is needed in that community, so from education, healthcare, to livelihood projects. But the essence is that this needs a good partnership with local municipalities, have to be integrated into the municipalities' integrated development plans, and so that the mines don't come up with initiatives that would sit outside of a vision created by a local municipality for its people.
Otherwise, you're talking cross purposes, certainly. Geralda, now, Anglo does interact with local government in provision of basic services to your mines, water, power, and the like. What are you witnessing in terms of the delivery and the capacity for delivery on the ground?
I think, as Sinazo said, municipalities particularly, we tend to work in rural communities. We work obviously within the Limpopo Northwest provinces for our platinum business. Municipalities, when we, for mining projects, need of course infrastructure like water, we need roads, we need that infrastructure to exist for the company to work effectively. And often, and also, as I've mentioned, for our social and labor plan projects, even where we would say to the municipality, on your point of their shared value in the mine, doing a water treatment plant or doing road infrastructure, there's benefit for the business and there is benefit for the community. But that is only realized when the municipality have got the capacity, the capability, and the people who would then be able to, for example, do the financial planning, the project management that is required to execute that. And I think often Anglo-American have experienced that we are sometimes challenged in being able to deliver these social and labor plan projects or deliver what is beneficial and needed for the mining project. And so it is in our benefit to be able to assist municipalities to build local capability and expertise, so that we, in collaboration with these municipalities, can execute successful projects.
And it brings me to another very important there, and Sinazo, perhaps you can address this, because we saw the Finance and Fiscal Commission recently warn that there's somewhat of a perverse incentive in the way that national government allocates money to municipalities, and it's generally the weakest and the most cash-strapped local authorities that get a little bit extra to prevent services from collapsing. But these are also those municipalities that don't have the capacity to manage and use these funds. Would you agree with that analysis?
It is a bit of a vicious circle, but it's also based on unfortunately, the history of our country and the spatial spread and how we basically developed governance and administration over time. So you do need to find mechanisms by which you can actually support these municipalities, build up the necessary capacity to start leveraging the economic potential in their areas, so they can begin to attract higher levels of skills, begin to attract greater levels of business and economic activity, and eventually drive growth and go up the value curve, whereby they're less dependent on the state. But until that happens, you cannot ignore them. You have to make sure that, particularly in terms of access to basic services, etc., that everybody within South Africa is able to access those basic services and is able to actually get the assistance they need to build better livelihoods.
And that all comes back to that constitutionally enshrined mandate of being a service delivery centre. Thomas, I want to bring you into the conversation quickly before we go into the details of the project. Many listeners might not be familiar with your organization. What does the Investment Climate Facility for Africa do?
Well, we're a fairly new institution, and it's a development institution for Africa, focused only on improving the business environment for small and big businesses. So it's a public-private partnership made up of African governments and the private sector, such as Anglo-American, and development partners in Africa.
And your mandate would then to be unblocking bottlenecks, to provide technical assistance. Take me through to what your mandate would be in that arena.
Correct. Together on the platform, we identify key barriers for doing business in Africa, and then we discuss practical solutions to implement to address those problems together. And most of our projects are headed by the government, so they take ownership of the solutions that are being implemented.
Once again, and that's a key theme that's running through this, is partnership and collaboration, because certainly neither party alone can address some of these very significant challenges. Geralda, let's turn our attention to what is, as I said earlier, quite impressive sounding project on paper at least. Anglo-American is in partnership with the DBSA and the Investment Climate Facility for Africa. And yesterday you launched what is called a capacity building program at 11 municipalities. I'm not going to ask you to name all of them.
Thank you.
They're across 5 provinces in South Africa. And I'd just like you to tell us about what this entails and how you went about selecting these 11 municipalities.
Sure. In coming back to, we spoke earlier about the shared benefit if municipalities are able to function better. And so, of course, for Anglo-American, we selected them on the basis that these are the municipalities we work with in the communities where we mine. We call this our host communities. So Anglo-American, as your listeners would know, of course, work, when I talk Anglo-American, I'm speaking Anglo-American Platinum, Coal South Africa, and Kumba Iron Ore. And so basically those are the 5 municipalities. And we've selected them that they the municipalities that basically host us because we mine there, and it is a mutual benefit for us to get these municipalities to function better. We've added one province, which is the Eastern Cape. As Sinazo mentioned earlier, the legacy of mining in South Africa has resulted in the fact that mining companies, including Anglo-American, employ people from the Eastern Cape, and we have, particularly in our platinum business, migrant workers who have come from the Ower Tambo municipality in the Eastern Cape, and so this is the one municipality where we don't mine but is included within this program, making up the 11th one.
Well, it's very innovative and far-sighted of you. Now, when one looks at Sinazo, some of the detail around what the project entails, we're looking at some 120 million rand, which will be invested for the first 3 years across these 11 municipalities. Tell me a little bit more about what the primary objectives are, and when we look at areas, there are some key deliverables as here listed over here, but I'll let you take me and the listeners through those.
Well, in essence, the program has 2 core objectives. One is increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of service delivery and operations and maintenance in those municipal areas. And also, as part of that, then helping to create a stimulating environment for greater economic activity and appropriate business climate. The way we approach the program is that we start by doing an assessment of the municipality to look at current backlogs, current institutional challenges, socio-economic trends, economic potential, etc. And we come up with a customized program per municipality in partnership not only with our partners at Anglo and ICF, but also with critical stakeholders, the political leadership, the administrative leadership, and also local stakeholders in the municipality to say how we're going to intervene to begin to turn things around. Now, in terms of the different core streams, they're focused around looking at issues around operations and maintenance and making sure we improve the ability of the municipality to get basic services right on a sustainable basis. They're focused around things in terms of revenue enhancements, dealing with electricity losses, water losses, improving the revenue base and efficiency of revenue collection in the municipality, just to get that revenue base up so we can reinvest. And it's also focused at various forms of institutional support, communications, better stakeholder management, and so forth.
Well, it certainly looks comprehensive on paper, and it'll be very interesting to watch the rollout. We just need to take a short break, and when we return, perhaps we can have a look at some of the implementation programs and where we are in terms of implementation with this project. You're listening to the Classic Business Panel on 102.7 FM. Welcome back to the Classic Business Panel tonight, and we're having a look at an extremely interesting public-private partnership between Anglo American, the DBSA, as well as the Development Manager Investment Climate Facility for Africa. Now, Sinazo, before we broke, I said we just have a look at implementation and how that is going. What are we seeing on an implementation level on the ground?
It's taken a while to finalize the actual intervention strategies, and we believe strongly that if you plan effectively from the get-go, then you're more likely to have successful implementation going forward. So we've managed to basically sign the service level agreements and agree on the intervention plan across all municipalities. We apart from KSD, which came on a little bit later, but we're busy finalizing that now. Also, we've basically got various experts on board to start working on the different work streams. They've already started in terms of looking at revenue enhancement strategies, beginning to actually map when we can start seeing some of those quick wins in terms of improvement in revenue enhancement, improvement in communication, and so forth. So I think we've made substantive progress in beginning to get momentum on the program, getting all the stakeholders on board, and also beginning to see the national stakeholders coming together, COCTA, National Treasury, DMR, in terms of saying let's really make this partnership work, and let's have 100% commitment and buy-in and taking it forward.
It's so good to do that and cut across the various silos within government, because very often, even within organizations, the silo mentality can make or break a project sometimes. Thomas, we look at your contribution to this partnership. What will you be bringing? Will you be bringing project management skills and the like to the table?
First of all, we're obviously a financial partner, so we're providing a grant which is $2.7 million. But we're also working with the partners and looking at the project management oversight and making sure that it's a dynamic process as we move ahead, and that we make adjustments if needed so that we really respond to the needs of each of the municipalities participating in this program.
Who's driving it is a partnership, Sinazo, but who is driving this? The DBSA?
Well, essentially, Anglo American is the lead on the program, and essentially we are supporting them and working with the ICF in terms of working with municipalities, their host municipalities, to actually realize the objectives of this program. So they're very much in the driving seat. I think Geralda would agree with me. But also it's part of the bigger initiative of Anglo's commitments and DBSA's commitments, and also ICF in terms of supporting the NDP, supporting the new framework agreement for the mining sector, etc. So I think it's a collective effort, all in all.
Mm-hmm. Geralda, as the driving partner, will you be making the programs and the lessons learned from this project publicly available so that there can be a broader spread of learning, because you are sort of charting new ground here?
Yes. We're doing this internally, of course, as well. So in terms of lessons learned, considering this as a pilot, where we're doing, as we've mentioned, 11 municipalities. So certainly it is a huge initiative or project for us, because, as I've mentioned earlier, it is also across 3 different business units, as Anglo-American call them. And so we've got a whole lot of internal sort of governance structures for this project, which include the day-to-day sort of operational oversights, and which then include us documenting with DBSA and with IFC as We engage the municipalities in these different structures at a provincial level, at a national level, and then also at the municipal level. So there's an internal oversight, there's an internal documenting of the lessons. We will be looking each year, as we are doing this over the 3 years, to see what the successes are and whether we continue with the project, and probably whether we include other municipalities and also our business unit, DBSA, who is not at the moment part of the project. In terms of lessons learned externally, we've even got a very exciting initiative, because we are piloting this project also with our business unit in Brazil. And so we've got an implementation partner there. We're sharing those lessons with DBSA at the moment. But that one is at a more local level and it's smaller. But we definitely, as a company, Anglo American is, as you know, we try and position leadership in these community interventions. And I think we are a global leader in terms of enterprise development. And so there's scope for us to learn how to work with municipalities better at not just the South African but an international arena.
That's a very good point you make, because one also can't be seen to be parachuting in to a municipality and expect to get buy-in from the local councillors on the ground. I mean, one needs to be very sensitive about how one goes about nudging people along and transforming what is the status quo. Thomas, I see you nodding over there. Are there similar projects that you're aware of elsewhere in Africa or globally?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of initiative, but I think, like you mentioned earlier in the program, it's like really how do we bring this down from a national level to municipalities. We as ICF have worked with some municipalities across Africa on the regulatory aspect, but to us this is really a new initiative to have a more holistic approach and also looking at the service delivery. So I think we really look forward to seeing how this is developing in South Africa, so that we can also take these lessons to other cities in Africa.
Well, as do we indeed, and it certainly speaks to the shared values and the sustainability that we've spoken so often of on this program. That's all we have time for tonight, I'm afraid. I'd like to thank all my guests tonight for your contributions. Geralda Wildschutt, Social Performance Manager at Anglo American, Thomas Fugelsnes, who is with the Investment Climate Facility for Africa, and Sinazo Sibisi, the Group Executive of Infrastructure Delivery at the DBSA. Thank you all so much for your contributions. From me, Michael Avery, producer Lee Kern, and sound engineer Titus Mashaba, thanks for spending the last while with us here on Classic Business. Glenn Lewington is up next with Classic Silver Screen. Good night.